Hello and welcome back to Pluck That. This is episode 3. My name is Nick Ciraldo. I'm joined as always with Mike Boyd and Jonathan Bass here to talk about all things guitar. If you've been paying attention so far, we typically start with the three of us, have a little chat, and then we get to a guest. We have a special guest, jazz phenom Eric Merchant, who will be joining us later, but we'll get to that after a bit of a catch up with this trio here, ketchup and mustard with the three of us. I think we should first cover the news. So the news is we've been doing a lot, the three of us, this past week or so. Bass, why don't you start?
Yeah, I actually had a nice recording session in Knoxville, Tennessee. Um, Old friend of mine is recording his second album, and and we converged on Knoxville because we had mutual friends who have a studio there. And yeah, it was a lot of time. I mean, we all day Saturday. Yeah, this past Saturday it was a good 10, 11 hour day in the studio. And it's a long trip for everyone, so we wanted to maximize everything. But yeah, I got to play some pedal steel, which is always fun. That's a relatively new instrument for me. I've only been doing it for about 5 years. Um, Something I always wanted, and uh, yeah, it was COVID. It was basically, yeah, my my 40th birthday present for my wife during COVID, and so it was very timely. I was able to put a lot of time in the initial learning process being locked down.
Yeah.
But yeah, we did a lot of great work in famous London recording studios in Knoxville. Um, so yeah, lots of Americana slash indie rock happenings, and the Kelly brothers are really great producers. So
So
yeah,
can you be my little guest for a minute here, Bass, and I can ask you a couple questions about your recording experience?
happily.
So 10 to 11 hours seems pretty daunting to me. Is that a typical amount of time?
Well, I mean, like I said, we were trying to maximize the trip up there, right? We don't get up there that often, and me especially. I'm even further away than my friend Matt, and so I don't know if you can have a typical, you know, I've definitely been in sessions that long for maybe special projects, seasonal projects. Um,
Because I usually
my
go in, I go in, they set me up, they put the microphone up, I play one track, and they're just like, please, that no more. We can't take any more perfection. So then I leave.
that's the word. Yeah. It's like Ciraldo. If you want, it's one take Ciraldo. That's yeah.
That's my nickname. One
Yeah,
takes
one
Ciraldo.
take Ciraldo.
It is now. It's better than barcode Boyd.
It's no, it's probably like after one take, they're like, you know what, Ciraldo, that's we're good, we're good. We're gonna go in another direction.
Well, some of it too is, studios. If I'm going in to record like my stuff, and it's jazz, you 99 times out of 100 you want a live performance, right? So everybody's just trying to knock it out, in one take, as in like one from start to finish, right? Um, Whereas this was more like on the creative side all the way through, like, hey, what about this? Like trying different things all the way through, right? Um, and sometimes you do have issues dialing in sound right at the beginning to like actually set up everything.
Okay, so it can
Um,
vary according to
yeah,
the like the stage of the project, how much you are a part of the creative process and stuff
yeah,
like
for
that.
sure. Yeah, because you in my experience, you wear down pretty fast. If you're really trying to get, a complete take, you know, and if that's for whatever reason not falling into place that day, it could go that long. But I mean, more than likely by that time you're pretty tired,
Right on.
So
But it went
I,
well, yeah.
each his own. Yeah, it was a great time. Yeah,
Good.
and,
Good,
and
man.
it helps with again the Kellys, uh, Jonathan and Fred Kelly. In Knoxville are fantastic producers. They're really fun to work with, and it's fun for me to be guided. Like I kind of like to be told, say, hey, try this, try this, try this, right? And I like to be able to adapt. Okay, sorry, I'm
No, that's great.
yammering.
Thanks for sharing, man. That's great. What about you, Boyd?
Well, nothing quite as exciting as that. Bass, a couple of months ago, recommended a new guitar case that he had gotten by Mono Creations, I think is the company, and it came in, and I had to convince myself to get it because do I want to pay that much for a soft gig bag type case? And I'm kind of blown away by it. It really is something I needed since I'm getting a few new instruments here and some handmade electric guitars, custom stuff. So I feel like it's going to be a welcome addition. One of the neat things was it came with a set of wheels. I don't know that I have necessarily a need for the wheels on just a small soft case, but last week I went to a friend's house to let him check out some of the new guitars, and I 2 or 3 years ago bought a double electric guitar case, and I've never actually had it out of the house, and oof, is it a beast to carry around. So I'm thinking maybe there's some way I can attach those wheels to that case and make use of that. So we'll
Yeah.
see. But one of the things that's kind of trumping that is I sold a guitar today. And I mentioned in the last podcast how I'm venturing forth, getting clearing house a little bit, getting rid of some instruments that I dearly love but just don't play as much anymore to make room for maybe some newer instruments that I will play. And my beloved Black Shear classical guitar was sold today to Robert from San Diego. So I hope it treats him as well as it has treated me all these years.
Well,
It's a
Robert, if you
fantastic guitar. Like,
yeah, no, I've played it too. I played it recently actually, and was very impressed. And Robert from San Diego, if you're listening, we hope you enjoy the podcast, and we hope you enjoy the Black Shear for years to come. Speaking of cases, Boyd, you let one of my students recently borrow another classical guitar of yours. He was very excited. He sounds great on it, but when he showed up, I was so utterly shocked by seeing a real blast from the past, the Mark Leaf case,
Yes.
otherwise known as the classical guitar coffin. This have you ever seen this case, Bass?
have I, Boyd?
Maybe it's so heavy and big that it often stays in the top of the closet. But what a heck of a case!
It,
And
basically, Bass, take about 1,000 pounds of fiberglass and other heavy plastics or whatever it is that they use and fit it into a mold, and then somewhere in there is a guitar, and it weighs about 1.5 tons, and it's got this little thin guitar strap that probably would work for about 2 minutes. He comes in, and I'm like, no, you're not using that case anymore. So I swapped it out with one of my own. But yeah, that case will survive a nuclear holocaust. I'm pretty sure of it.
it really will. And it was kind of neat because at the time when Leaf was still in business, Mark Leaf, I think is his name. I asked him, I was like, is there any way? I was playing with a footstool at the time, and I had a case cover for one of my other cases, and could just throw like some things in there, like the footstool, and it was just so convenient. And I said, "Is there any way you can do something to accommodate, a footstool?" He said, "Well, send me the dimensions and let me see what I could do." And it was kind of a one-off thing where it has this just compartment where you slide the footstool down in there and just encloses everything, and it was a really neat idea.
It's like the Bentley of cases, just like super, super solid and heavy. Um,
Okay, I just looked it up, and yeah, I remember that case, Boyd. Yeah.
yeah. So I poke fun at you, Bass, but Boyd, but I had one of those cases, so I know. I mean, I bought one with one of the first high end classical guitars that I ever purchased, and I remember showing up one time to one of my former guitar teachers' houses to with the case, and he's like, "Oh, that case just makes my back hurt looking at it."
It's about right.
Yeah, but
Well, I
so
mean, you get a footstool and a case.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, very good. I got some news. So we had another guitar donated to us from the same wonderful family in town, and I'll just point to it from here. It's a Gibson Les Paul 1970s reissue. I'm not too familiar with the Les Paul line because there are so many different options, but this one, for interested listeners, has micro or mini humbuckers, which are supposed to give a slightly brighter sound. This past week, I received it. I cleaned it up, got some new strings on it, and I'm really excited about our students playing it. I went to some local high schools to do some recruiting this past week. And one thing that kind of caught my attention was guitar strings on their guitars. So, in many of these high schools where they have a guitar program, there are acoustic or classical guitars just everywhere in the room. And they're usually hanging, or if they put them away in cases, they're on some kind of rack. And, so these strings are being used day in and day out by several students throughout the day. These guitars could change hands maybe 3 or 4 times in one day. So the strings are shot. And just one wonders how often they're replaced, what the school budgets are like. And it just kind of made me feel a little sympathy for these kids trying to sound great on guitars, but they're struggling with strings. And then the final thing I'll say as far as my news this week was so the air conditioning fan was out in my my office at school, and so it's being repaired right now. But in the meantime, I benefited from the kindness of a colleague who let me use his office instead on a different floor and in between two classrooms. Well, I was about to teach a commercial music lessons, which involves classical guitar and electric guitar, and I decided to let loose a little bit before the students showed up. And I picked up my electric and turned down the distortion and just started to wail away for about 30 seconds before there was a huge knock on the door. So I go up and open the door. It's my colleague, the bassoon faculty. And she's totally surprised. Like, what are you doing in here, kind of a thing. And then she's like, we're having a guest masterclass right next door. And so apparently somebody's trying to play like Mozart bassoon concerto for this celebrity guest artist, and next door you hear that's a total interruption. So I felt terrible, but it was hilarious.
That's amazing.
All right, it's time to get to rants.
What is it this week?
What is it this week? Well, so last week I complained a little bit about guitar competitions. This week I'm going to complain a little bit about guitar competitions.
I'm sensing a theme here.
Yeah, this is part 2 of a series. Last week I complained about the sheer number of guitar competitions for classical guitar. This week I'm going to complain about how judging is done at these competitions. So, all right. First of all, some of these guitar competitions have little rubrics for the judges. Like they have these, you show up, you're a judge, you sit down, and somebody hands you a piece of paper and says, we'd like you to, score the competitors based on this rubric. And the rubric could say anything from like musicianship 1 to 10, or stage presence 1 to 10, or number of mistakes 1 to 10. Like, is that 10 mistakes, or is that like, exactly what is that all about? And other kind of like really hard to assess things. But sometimes the hosts will go so far as to total all those numbers up and then use that to determine who wins first, second, third, etc. Now, what if somebody has bad stage presence for whatever reason, but they shred on stage, like they're amazing? Does that mean that they get like a 2 out of 10 for stage presence, and all of a sudden they could get knocked down to like second or third or fourth prize because of that? Like just a lot of weird things about the rubric. Another problem that I have with judging is that in many competitions, there's a mandate to not talk with the competitors after the competition. I've been in part of the adjudication, I don't know what you want to call it, jury panel, whatever. I've been one of the judges. And the host will say, do not talk under any circumstances, do not talk with the competitors afterward. Now, on the one hand, sometimes I guess a judge will say something to somebody afterward, and humans are flawed, and they may say something that is contradictory to what the judges, how the judges decided, or maybe they let something out that was, some kind of a controversial comment. But I firmly believe that um, if somebody comes up to you and says, I would like to know what I did wrong, I would like to know for my improvement, how do you think I could play better the next time, and so on, you should feel fully, you should feel free to share as an expert in the field. Another issue I have is the selection of judges. There are judges who I've been on these in these groups of judges where these people should just not be in the group. They just were invited because maybe they needed three judges and they couldn't find enough, or for whatever reason there might be somebody in there who really should not be one of the judges, and it's really hard to work with them. Nothing against them personally, it's just a matter of sort of expertise, I guess you could say. um Another rant I have is what judges say. I've heard people complain about the music that they judged. Like, I've heard a judge say, well, yeah, they were a good player, but I really didn't like the music they played. And then they would be ranked lower based on the actual repertoire selection. And that rep could have been selected for any number of reasons. But to me, it's about how they played on that day, not about their chosen rep.
Well, Nick, if you don't mind me interjecting here, I had a similar experience not terribly long ago where one of the competitors was criticized because the judge said, well, it's like he's just picking pieces to win a competition.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the point. Yeah.
Mm.
Um, Another issue is that I have been one of the judges of a competition where another judge was the teacher of a student. And this happens a lot. It is very common, at least in this country, for teachers of students in the competition to be the judges themselves, all the way up to the final round. Now, whenever I go to a competition with a student, I do not want to be a judge. Sometimes they ask me to be a judge if they can't find enough judges. They're like, "Oh, Nick, we need one more. You can do it." And I'll say, "Absolutely not. I do not want to be a judge. Only in certain circumstances where they're like, we are desperate, we absolutely need a judge. We can't do this competition otherwise." I'll say, "Okay, but I'm not going to speak much. I don't even know if I should vote. Like I'm going to be part of this panel." But I've been in a final round jury, discussion where the teacher of another competitor was in the room as a judge, and he said, well, you should really hear the progress that this student has made all semester. If you heard that piece back in January, you'd be amazed because of how it sounds now. And I'm thinking to myself, this is like so inappropriate, this process right
Well,
now.
yeah, I don't understand how someone could be, so afraid of like the I don't know, the situation turning litigious because of uh hey, don't talk to the students after the or the competitors after the competition, right? If you're afraid of blowback there, like how could you possibly use the same reasoning or use that reasoning and then allow a teacher of the student to be a judge? I don't
Yeah.
understand. Like
Yeah.
that makes zero sense.
There was a competition we hosted at USM a number of years ago, 20 years ago, where more than 20, because you weren't there, Nick. There was one of the regional instructors from a different college evidently had it worked out to where he was asked to be a judge, and his student was performing in the collegiate artist level competition, but didn't divulge it was his student. So this not only touches on that, when we talk about that rubric and the grading, he deliberately gave every other competitor low scores except for his student to skew those results. And at
Nice.
the end, once there was no real discussion. It's like we're going strictly by points and not narrowing it down or discussing from a pool of maybe the top 3 or 5 who should be ranked. And it was found out afterwards when he received the prize money. They were walking out together. They rode up together and everything, and just never divulged it. And he sabotaged that.
Terrible, terrible. I hate competitions where they don't let you discuss. The judging process is such that there's like a numbering system, and whoever comes out on top is going to be the winner. And I feel like the discussion is absolutely essential because you may have missed something, you may have a strong opinion about something or some kind of a bias and need to be kind of brought back to, a neutral zone. I feel like just like we're talking about music right now to better understand everything, so too should you be able to discuss a competition. My wife is an orchestral musician and is on the panel often for auditions for her orchestra. They're always discussing the finalists, and they discuss at length, and kind of in making sure that everyone is on the same page and sort of come up with the best solution. So, but I can't imagine. I've not experienced that firsthand, but I can't imagine being in a room and just scoring and then walking away. So, and the final thing I'll say is like, and I don't really know if this has to do with judges in a guitar competition or just human nature, but sometimes you might have a big name in the room as a judge and they can intentionally or not kind of sway people's votes just because everyone, worships them and wants to do what they say, kind of like a group think kind of a situation. But I think ultimately, and just to wrap and not, talk too much about this topic, I think that you should always talk afterward to competitors. I think you should be frank about their playing, but respectful. I think you should select judges who have a record of good judging. They don't need to be even like the best players. They just have to have a record of good judgment. You don't have to have a rubric or any kind of a judging sheet. Don't allow teachers to be judges of their own students in that competition. Allow discussion. And I think that they should have a monitor, not to be part of the conversation, but to ensure, fair judging. All right.
Agreed.
Rant over. I'm done. I promise.
Right on time, Nick.
All right. Now it is time to get to our guest for this episode, Eric Merchant. Eric Merchant is a New Orleans-based guitarist, trained there and works there. He is a 7-string jazz guitarist, known for his incredibly virtuosic bebop playing, and it's a real honor and a treat to have him on our show. He's also a colleague of mine at Southern Miss, and so let's get Eric Merchant on. All right, we are finally here with Eric Merchant. Eric, welcome to Pluck That.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. What an honor.
Yeah, I was just saying that, we work together at Southern Miss, and our listeners, I'll share that I've had the honor of studying with you as well for several semesters in a row. I took some jazz lessons from you, learned a ton, and I've seen you play a number of times. I've heard your recordings. We all have, actually, and just makes this moment very special. Thanks so much for joining us.
Oh, absolutely. I'm glad to be here. And I would love a classical lesson or two someday also. So
anytime.
Great.
All right. So we're going to ask you just a series of questions and then kind of bring you on with us for a couple of topics that we can all kind of talk about.
Sure.
Can you first talk about your sound? Something that's really important to me is my tone. All of us really. Musicians talk about that kind of thing a lot. Can you tell us how you've arrived at your tone color and your attack and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I like kind of a darker sound, and I like a more legato sound. I found a guitar maybe 6 or 7 years ago that I really love, and that's been my go-to for all electric gigs basically since then. It's a Eastman El Rey 7-string, and I really love that. And amps, I kind of go back and forth a little bit. I recently picked up a Fender Princeton that I like a lot. So I've been using that, and it's really nice. But yeah, I don't know. I've never been a gearhead at all. I'm kind of the opposite of a gearhead. I kind of just find a guitar that I enjoy playing and do my best to to make the sound come out of it, if that makes any sense. Almost it's like the setup and how it feels and how comfortable it is a little more important to me, I think,
Yeah.
than some other things.
And I guess it's a good thing you don't see the 55 pedals sitting on Mike Boyd's floor at the moment.
Oh, that's fine. I mean, you know.
If you do, they're just at least not going to distract you.
Yeah.
No, right on. All right, cool.
I'm a Princeton guy too. What kind of Princeton do you have?
Just the Princeton Reverb. I think it's only a few years old. I picked it up used, and it's got a 12-inch speaker that
Oh,
whoever owned
so
it
yeah,
before
I was
me
going to ask if you got,
upgraded it to.
yeah,
Yeah, it sounds really nice. I've
yeah.
been wanting a tube amp for like 10 years, and I finally bit the bullet.
I find the Princeton to be able to do just about anything.
Mhm.
It's my main gigging amp. I have a 65 reissue that has had some modifications done to it, but I still kept a 10. I like the 10-inch speaker.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, for
I've
whatever
also been
reason.
messing around with oh, sorry.
No, no, go ahead.
I also recently acquired a Henriksen
Yeah,
Blue 6 for just like gigs in the quarter that I don't feel like lugging a 35-pound amp to, and that sounds amazing too.
So you brought up the quarter, and we have told our listeners that you're a New Orleans-based guitarist, and are regularly performing in New Orleans. I mean, many times a week, very
Yeah.
busy, very in demand. And I was wondering if you could share with us your description of the current New Orleans gig scene. And you've been there for a while, so like, has it changed over the years?
Well, the pandemic was a really weird thing with that. But I think now, finally, maybe in the past year or two, we're fully back from that. But yeah, the gig scene is interesting. I lived in North Carolina before New Orleans, and I think that's more like a kind of a regular American city gig scene. And then New Orleans, there's just so much work for so many musicians. It's the only place I've ever been where I feel like you can. It's almost like a blue collar job in certain aspects to be a musician. Like I'll play with people in the French Quarter who like put their kids through college playing 9 gigs a week.
yeah,
Some 70-year-old guy who like raised a family just basically working full time. Like we talk about being a full time musician, but these guys are actually putting in like 40 hours a week playing gigs. So
Wow.
you know, it's the tourist scene helps with that a lot, and just the fact that New Orleans is like the classic jazz city.
Well, if you don't mind me piggybacking on that, New Orleans obviously is known for its music scene, its vibrance, the historical aspect of it, but also, like you said, a big tourist city. Do you ever feel like the expectations of a working musician there might be different, from some other place besides New Orleans that isn't a big tourist draw?
I think there's elements of that. Like there's a lot of people who play on Frenchman Street who really try to create the image that you've stepped into 1925 or whatever, like they're wearing the fedora and they got the pocket watch and the vest, and they're doing their best to play this like replica of traditional jazz. So I think that is largely catering to tourists. It's almost like it's like Disney World, Epcot at Disney World or something. You've stepped back in time. So there's a lot of that, but there's also all kinds of music. There's plenty of modern jazz, pop, rock, funk, and anything like that. But I think that's kind of the one aspect maybe that really caters to tourists and that people who come to New Orleans like in a way that's different than any other city.
Yeah.
Have you ever felt any pressure to cater that yourself, be it the venues or people that are booking you to do something like that?
No, and I don't really play that much traditional jazz. So that might be the reason. I know a bit of the repertoire, but not a crazy amount of that. And yeah, that's just not quite the niche that I've found myself in. So not really. I don't own any fedoras or anything.
That's, I think, a nice segue to another question that we had
Yeah.
Bebop versus the rest of jazz. Have you experienced challenges pursuing that amidst New Orleans and what people want, or just finding people to play with? How your identity in that larger field of jazz?
Mm, yeah. Well, I have a band that gigs occasionally, and sometimes I'm more inspired to book gigs with them. But that's like all bebop. We play just arrangements of Bud Powell and Charlie Parker and those people, and they're very involved arrangements, and we've got to rehearse, and it's this pretty polished thing. But we don't play together that often, just because it's kind of hard to find a gig for that band, you know. So I spend most of my time working as a sideman, but it's fine. I can play, just standards in the way that I play and bring that bebop language to that.
Right on.
I find it pretty easy to play a lot, just in the way that I play. I don't feel the need to cater to some other trad jazz thing or in any other direction. And it's been working out for me for 12 years or so here.
Yeah, yeah, I'll say.
I'm actually surprised to hear that. Not that it's working out for you, but just to not feel the need, because I would feel the same way if I was in a situation. I don't really know the repertoire of the trad jazz, so I mean I know it, but I just don't play it. You know what
Mm-hmm.
I mean? I think how you started off the conversation would be a lot of what people would assume. Like you would sort of be forced in a way to play a lot of trad jazz. It's cool that you can, well, that you don't have to if you don't want to. I I like that stuff, but it is a specialized, sort of style.
It
Um,
is, and I also think it's a little more interesting for horn players. For
yeah,
example,
well,
the
yeah, for
guitar
sure.
has a really like I'm kind of playing quarter notes role, which is amazing, and a lot of people do that amazingly well. I mean, Freddie Green and the Basie band,
Yeah,
that kind of thing. But yeah, I mean, New Orleans also has a tradition of like modern jazz. People like Ellis Marsalis and
sure.
Harold Batiste and all these people have a. Have y'all ever heard of the Silver Book?
I don't think so.
It's basically a real book compilation, but of modern New Orleans jazz tunes. So it's
Very
full
cool.
of tunes by Ellis and Harold Batiste and all these people. And they were writing in like the 70s and 80s and 90s. So there is definitely a tradition of more modern jazz, odd time signatures and stuff like that
Of
that has
course.
also come through New Orleans.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
Earlier, you were talking about the way that you like to play. When you were talking about your tone, you said I like a darker tone. I'm more of a legato player. And I remember when I was studying with you, you showed me some of those techniques, and I wondered if that was like an influence of people you studied with, or is this sort of your own path?
Yeah, I think it comes from listening to a lot of horn players and pianists, especially saxophonists tend to play a lot more legato in the jazz style. So getting that into my ears has definitely informed the way that I phrase. And also I find it just easier. It's hard to pick every note like George Benson or Pat Martino or somebody like that who just has this like machine gun kind of right hand going. I don't love the sound as much, and also it's working a little harder than I want to work. I think.
So we have all kinds of listeners. So how do you get that? How do you how do you achieve the legato playing?
I think what I did is I for a while was practicing economy picking every day a whole lot so that I could pick every note pretty efficiently. And then I stopped practicing that every day and I started learning lots of Charlie Parker solos. And I found that the only way to achieve his phrasing or anywhere close to his phrasing was using lots of hammer-ons and pull-offs, and even when I'm picking a lot, try to make it as legato as possible.
And for our listeners, economy picking is when you're not going down, up, down, up, in that sort of binary fashion back and forth, you would be going, let's say, down on one string and then continue to go down onto the next string instead of striking that next string in the opposite direction. I hope that's clear.
For sure.
It's just moving as little as possible.
Yeah, moving as little as possible, dragging through strings. And if anyone's never tried that, you should give it a shot.
So being a 7-string player, how much solo work do you get?
I go back and forth. Sometimes I play more solo gigs and sometimes I play less. I would like to play more, actually. I would love just a weekly solo gig because I practice that way a lot, coming up with arrangements and whatnot. But it's also great for intros and for outros and for playing duo gigs like with a singer. So I use it in that regard too. Anytime there's no bass player, I use the 7-string substantially more. And it's actually a lot easier than you would think because I tune my low string to an A.
Okay.
So any chord that has the root on the A string on a normal guitar, you can just move your finger over a couple of strings and all of a sudden you have a 7-string chord,
And this may sound like a very elementary, question, but how did you find your way to the 7-string?
My teacher at UNO, Steve Mazakowski, is a 7-string player, and his teacher before him, I don't know if y'all ever heard of Hank Mackey, is a great 7-string player, and there's actually kind of a New Orleans lineage of 7-string players. I think Ted Ludwig, who y'all interviewed last week, I believe he plays 7, right?
Yeah.
Davey Mooney was a player who used to live here. Now he's head of the guitar department at UNT. He plays 7-string. There was a guitar builder, Jimmy Foster, in town. That was before my time, but he built a lot of 7-strings for local people. So yeah, I don't know, mostly because of my teacher, but there's this lineage of New Orleans 7-string players that feels pretty cool to be a part of. And they're also easy to find here because everyone who studies under Steve buys a 7-string, and then like 95% of those people sell them. So if you go to Todd's Music out in Metairie, which is the like used gear shop, it's just like a 7-string graveyard there. It's actually
That's amazing. It's kind of like
that's where I got the Eastman I play on.
It reminds me, this is a horrible side note, but I'm a cyclist as well, and it's always funny, like you can pick up such good gear after a triathlon has ended, because all these people will buy bikes and then do the triathlon, like I'm never doing that again, and offload them at the local shop. So it kind of sounds hilarious. Like that.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, what was the name of this place again?
Todd's Music Express. It's it's New Orleans is weird. There's a million musicians here, but there's very few music stores.
No, I've for sure noticed that. Yeah.
But yeah, Todd's is great. They sell a lot of nice gear. I bought several.
I'm writing it down.
Guitars. Yeah.
I'm making that in New Orleans quite a bit. I'm going to stop there.
Definitely going to make a
road
road
trip. When I first started playing 7-string, I bought this cheap Ibanez, and I couldn't play anything on it. Just that extra string totally broke my brain. Could not play the guitar anymore. And I kind of practiced it for like 6 months and then ended up selling it because I took the guitar out of its case one day and the entire bridge had snapped off and all the strings were just like spaghetti. So I brought it to Todd's and they told me that, yeah, this guitar is so cheap. They just took the bridge from a 6-string Ibanez and just drilled an extra hole in it. There was like no counting for all of this, 100 pounds or whatever of extra tension on the guitar. So those cheap Ibanez, I think 7-strings are kind of destined to fail. But then a year later, I hadn't touched a 7-string and I picked this up in the shop and all of a sudden I could just play it. So something had settled into my brain from those 6 months of practicing.
Well, it's funny. It's almost kind of affirming to hear you say that, like someone who is as accomplished as you on that instrument initially going like, I can't wrap my brain around it. I've got a student right now who has a very lovely Ibanez 8-string. Oh, wow. And I've been trying to help him do some things, work out some scale patterns, but it's hard for me to wrap my head around that. Mm-hmm. Nick mentioned earlier one of his students that's borrowing one of my guitars. He has a 7-string, and he let me have this one, kind of swap off while he uses mine. Mm-hmm. I can't wrap my brain around it, and it's weird because I played a lute, like I have a old Theorbo style that had 10 strings on it, but I didn't have to fret the lower 6 strings, or
Oh,
I was, oh sorry, it's 12 strings. I didn't have to fret the lower one, so I didn't have to think about that. Just
yeah.
reach for a note. So I still really kind of struggle with that. So that's like I said, affirming, but also nice to see that at some point it does click.
Yeah. And I think, like I said, in the interim year where I literally didn't think about seven string at all, something clicked. So
Yeah.
I don't know what it was. Our brains sometimes just need a little time to mull things over.
Speaking of that student who has a 7 string guitar and is borrowing Boyd's 6 string, sometimes he reaches for a phantom seventh string when he's playing on the sixth
Oh,
string.
yeah.
He's still kind of adjusting.
That was
Yeah.
actually going to be my question to Eric. When you switch back to a six string, it's got to be a little foreign, you know?
No, actually that never was a problem. I think I spent enough years working on six string that's just in me.
Gotcha.
Riding a bike.
Hmm.
So we've been talking about guitars, we've been talking about students. I think it might be time for us to get into a couple topics
Yeah.
with you. One of them is the three of us, we talk a lot about various things, guitar. It's one of the many reasons why we wanted to form this podcast, to kind of open that conversation to others like you. And one of the things we've brought up recently is student guitars. When a student looks for a recommendation, or when you're in the position of trying to find something for a student, or that kind of thing. How serious does a student guitar need to be is the conversation that we've brought up. I don't know. Do you have anything to say about that?
Not a whole lot, except I think the main thing is that it's just very playable, because the easiest way to just turn somebody off from playing the guitar is having something with like crazy high action, or that just tears up their fingers, because they're not going to want to play it. So that is the main thing for me. But aside from that, obviously a nice instrument that plays in tune is the ideal. But really anything that they're happy to be practicing on, I'm happy to have them play on.
Amen.
Yeah, it's so simple and yet so profound. I mean, something that they want to play.
Yeah. Um,
um,
and
but
like there have been a lot of great musicians who have made a lot of great music on solid body guitars. There's like a bit of a lineage of Telecaster players, Ted Green, and several others. Even like Julian Lodge nowadays. He's got kind of a more maybe folk or country influenced tone. But there have been some great players with a darker sound on Telecasters, on Stratocasters,
Yeah. Ed
anything
Bickert.
like that. Yeah, Ed Bickert's one.
Yeah.
And
Lauren Lofsky. Yeah.
yeah, another Canadian.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I almost think there's something to be said about solid body guitars being able to get a little closer to a horn-like sound than archtop guitars. I know the archtop is like the classic jazz sound, Wes Montgomery and stuff like that, but they can't sustain really. They don't have the sustain that a Strat does. So if you are actually looking to sound more horn-like, there might be a case to be made that just like playing on a factory Strat could achieve that more
That's
than a Gibson, L5 or whatever.
that's usually my choice, my weapon of choice.
Yeah.
I used to be a Tele guy, and I still am, but
Hmm.
I've gravitated towards Strats in the past, I don't know, 6 or 7 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just,
I,
and I find that to be true. The the versatility of a solid body to me, it, well, frankly, even on a jazz gig, the people I play with, we tend to go in and out of styles. It's
mhm.
all jazz, but we might not play it straight. You
Yeah.
know, we might take a standard and do something a little weird with it.
Hmm.
T sonically, that is.
Yeah.
And it just helps me, to have something that's, like you said, a little bit more horn-like. I've never really thought about horn-like, but you're right. It's a little bit easier to hold on. Yeah, like you said, I mean, the sustain helps. That's all there is
Hmm.
to it. An old guitar teacher's method was definitely, you want it to be possible to play, but they wanted the student guitars sometimes to, you know, be a little tough on the fingers, you know what I mean, right up front.
Mm.
And then
Hmm.
this idea that you could graduate to something that was easier to play.
Oh yeah,
And I look back on that, and it's like, no, like that, like it should not be a physical struggle because those calluses are going to happen no matter what.
yeah,
It might take a little bit more time, but why just, injure yourself in the process? Why bleed in the process if you don't have to? Yeah.
I agree. Yeah, I agree.
I
Uh,
recommend used guitars. Whenever I can, I recommend used guitars. They're played in, they're kind of, all the kinks have been worked out, and you're going to save a lot of money off of, from retail.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, I like Eastman's a lot for I have an Eastman flat top acoustic too. Just if a student can pull together like 8 or 900 bucks, they can probably find a used Eastman that will serve them for many years.
Yeah.
Bass has a steel string Eastman that I fell in love with, and we tried several guitars between me playing for him and him playing for me in the shop, and that one it sang, and
Yeah.
something about the balance of that style of the OM model really inspired me. I've picked up a guitar since then because it's a different monster altogether. Eastman's really are amazing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're killing it. I mean, I was telling these guys about this Eastman acoustic that I played at Maple Street Guitars in Atlanta. Have you ever been to Maple Street Guitars? Any of you?
No.
It's an amazing store. I mean, really, all styles of guitar are there. And I was looking for an acoustic, and I went through a dozen different acoustics and and found one that I really liked. It was a cedar top acoustic guitar, and fell in love with it, but wanted to just kind of sleep on it. And the next day, I went to go buy it, and it was sold.
Oh no,
Yeah, such a bummer.
heartbreaking.
Yeah, it was.
That'll teach you.
The
I know,
one that got away.
the one that got
Yeah.
away.
Eric, I hope you don't mind me piggybacking on something that was said earlier. You self-admittedly said that you're not much of a gearhead. You just really kind of gravitate more to the feel and comfort of a guitar. But I do wonder, are there any certain aspects of the guitar that you're engaging with that help you maybe get the sound you're looking for out of it, like any particular pickup styles, P90s versus humbuckers versus anything like that? Or is it really just something that you pick up, a stock instrument, you dig in, and it speaks to you? Or have you ever been, curious about changing things out to get, different, equipment to refine the sound or anything like that?
Not really. No. Someday I'll have a nice fancy custom guitar probably, but I kind of just try to make the best with what I got, largely, unless I think something needs to be changed. But I don't know. I really love the guitar I've been playing on forever, and it's so comfortable. I really don't like when I go back and forth between scale length. That messes me up a little bit. So I kind of found the scale length that I like, and yeah.
Well, that's great. Great. And I must say, after having seen you play a couple of times now, I mean, that guitar is, obviously serving you quite well.
Oh yeah, thanks. Yeah, I like it a lot. Apparently they stopped making them, so I need to
Oh,
be a little careful when I travel with it and whatnot now. Because they've gotten to be a little more rare.
mm.
But,
Um, Another thing that so we're all kind of, the three of us are kind of classically trained. And I was, it's funny that you mentioned you monitored classical lesson, because I got to say that watching you play and learning from you, I've modified my technique a little bit. So you've been
oh,
influential in that regard as well. Yeah, I mean, so you push the guitar's head outward a little bit when you play, and I've been doing more of that, and it's
hmm.
been it's had a positive effect on my classical playing.
Oh really? Wow.
Oh yeah, yeah. I guess the thing that I've noticed in my training, my teaching, is that we have jazz students that study classical, we have commercial music students that study classical, and
Hmm.
it's my firm belief that studying classical technique can help their playing of any style, whether it's bluegrass or jazz, or I don't know. Have you noticed that? Have you, because you actually, the way you play is a very kind of classical position. You use a footstool, the guitar is positioned at a pretty steep angle.
Hmm.
And the way that your left hand works, it looks very classical. So I mean, maybe it just is the way you play, and it's just sort of organically has gotten to that point. But I don't know. Do you have anything to say about like classical technique helping players, or I guess like more efficient playing, that kind of thing, helping in a jazz environment? I don't know.
Yeah. One of my favorite players in the world is a guy named Pasquale Grasso. You guys ever heard of this fella? And
I
Yeah.
got just
he's classically trained, and he can really play, But I think it's more of a left hand thing, though, right? Like there's no pedagogy for pick playing, so that's kind of the thing that every guitarist needs to sort of arrive at pretty personally, I think. Um,
Why? Can I interrupt you real quick? Why is that? Like,
come on, Nick, don't fight this.
it drives me drives me
I've been
crazy.
I've been trying to tell you this for
Well, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe there should be, but I've met a lot of great classical players, and all of them seem to hold a pick differently. Seem to use some play alternate style. Some, Charlie Christian, the bebop innovator, used all downstrokes when he played, which is insane to me. I can't
Yeah.
imagine. So yeah, there should be some kind of. I'm pretty happy with the way I pick. So that's.
No, it's just Bass is just making
Yeah.
fun of me because I've gone on and on and on to them about how like I'm basically trying to classify the pick technique. I've been like
Yeah.
over analyzing it and trying to figure out the best, most efficient way to hold it, to play with it. And
Are you wiggling your finger to pick? Are you picking from the wrist? Or I have a combination. I can pick like kind of the fastest if I'm coming more from my elbow,
same.
like swiveling here. So
Yeah.
it's a whole there are like three different
yeah.
points that you could be changing stuff at for
Yeah,
sure.
This kind of
Nick, I'm
stuff
not saying
drives
that
me
you should
crazy.
not look for the most efficient way. I'm saying when you arrive at it, it's going to be yours,
Yeah.
Uh,
and you're not going to be, it's. I've tried for years to, or I did, and I finally gave up years ago to get students, like no, you got to do this, you got to do this, and then I realized, well, actually, I can't do certain things because I have limitations on my right hand, you know. And but I don't really have a problem with the way I pick
Hmm.
for the most part. I mean, like I'll definitely listen back to recordings and be like, all right, if I was a little bit more relaxed or I had better right hand technique, that would have sounded better. But at the same time, it's like as soon as you think you arrive something or you think that something won't work, you see a player, this amazing player, either present day or in the past, that did something bananas. Like, I mean, to me, still the Benson inverted hold. Um,
Yeah. A lot of
uh,
players use that actually.
Diesel Alexander, he's a new guy, and he does the
Yeah.
same way, man. And just like the way they float through lines, like holding the pick like that, just it blows my mind. I could
There was
never
a,
do
there
it.
was a minute where I was trying to get into that, but the I stopped for a very conscious reason because when you hold the pick like at a vertical angle towards the strings, you can't use your fingers to play chords.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's a great
That's kind
point.
of the reason I gave that up because I wanna be able to do that kind of
Yeah,
thing. You know?
exactly,
But if you're just trying to shred amazing lines, like the Benson thing is something to be said for that.
for sure.
But that's a more staccato way of playing too. I think
Yeah,
it gives
and
you a
then you got
more
Pat
staccato.
Metheny who holds. What?
I don't even know what he's doing yet.
Dude, that's just weird. But I mean, listen to the man play.
Yeah.
It's just,
I've been fitting it in between my pinky and ring finger and just kind of hitting the strings like that,
Oh
and
yeah.
it's yeah,
well, and
it's
then you
working.
talk about severe angle, and then one of my favorite players ever is John Stoll,
Yeah.
and it's like he has the little teardrop pick stuck just by like static, like by contact, they'll just
Whoa.
like reach, or maybe it's this finger, I can't remember. But I watched him demonstrate it. I was just like, that's crazy, like I thought, well, for the longest time, I thought he was just finger picking,
Oh
and
yeah.
just kind of had, a good, PI kind of thing,
Hmm.
and but no, he's got this little teardrop jazz pick, and then he'll just sort of let it go, but it sticks to his finger, and then
That's wild.
It's wild.
I tuck my pick sometimes here, and then I can play 5 string chords
Yeah.
because now I can use this finger tip.
Wow.
I
That's
was
that's
a
that's the thing.
I played with a thumb pick for a long time, so I could do that.
Uh,
And I
oh
finally,
yeah, that same end. Yeah.
yeah.
Hmm.
But
Cool.
going back to your left hand, you said you have you thought a lot about your left hand technique as far as
Yeah.
efficiency and that kind of thing?
Yeah. Just trying to move as little as possible, trying to use all my digits when I can. And I don't know. I was playing with a bass player friend of mine, and I was showing him some stuff on the guitar, and he told me I finger scales like a bass player, which I thought was interesting, just like where I shift position and stuff like that. But it's just kind of the way that made the most sense for me from a efficiency perspective.
Yeah, because that's definitely a classical thing. We talk a lot about efficiency. We talk a lot about
Mhm.
moving the fingers as little as possible. You know, if any of our listeners are just kind of getting started in the guitar, I recommend that you don't lift your fingers outward too much when they're not being used, because
Mm.
it's not only a great distance that you have to come back to the frets, to the strings, but it's also tension, right? You're extending your fingers outward, and
Yeah.
so you're trying to put one finger down in this way, flexing one part of your arm, and then extending with another part of your arm, and it's just kind of a conflict of interest there. Um, let's go back to your art form, the kind of jazz that you like to perform, and
Mm.
finding inspiration when pursuing a very high level art form. What has been inspiring you these days, as far as your next creative project or that kind of thing? Because I think many of our listeners understand jazz, and kind of have a maybe a some may have a very deep knowledge of the art form. Some may have kind of a basic understanding, but some people may not realize that bebop is extremely difficult and is an extremely rich, deep, virtuosic, and exciting kind of period of jazz. And so you're
Mm.
you're I believe that you're pursuing something that is like very, very high level stuff in jazz. So what inspires you these days?
These days I've actually been listening to more guitar players than I usually listen to, which is kind of a funny thing. I was in Berlin over the summer and I caught Kurt Rosenwinkel concert. Kurt and was playing duo with Gerald Clayton. That was pretty inspiring to me, hearing that music. Been listening to some Pat Metheny. I don't know, just a little more modern guitar players, I guess, is
That's
what I've been listening to these days.
that's so surprising to hear you say that. I would have assumed, but it sounds like you maybe went through a period where you were listening to like Bud Powell and
Oh, I
um,
still am all the time. Yeah,
yeah.
he's yeah the greatest, my hero. Um, I'm really into the teachings of Barry Harris, his like harmonic perspective. He's got a whole school of thought about chords and movement in harmony. That's pretty unique and pretty counter to like Berkeley Jazz School harmony, I guess.
Yeah.
So
I've
that's
been
kind of
listening.
where I try to come from a harmonic perspective. I actually discovered recently, a couple weeks ago, somebody hipped me to a guitarist named Ronnie Singer, who was like nobody knows who this guy is, but he died in 1953, and he was just playing beautiful bebop on the guitar. But there's only 6 recordings of him that exist. He died when he was 25, but they're absolutely incredible. So that's kind of one other thing I've discovered recently that I've been thinking a lot about.
Mhm. I find a lot of inspiration from non-guitarists, and that's why I was surprised to hear you say you've been listening to some guitarists lately.
Yeah.
I went through a long spell myself where I refused almost to listen to jazz guitarists, especially, and it was just horn players all the time. You know,
Hmm.
uh, I mean, mainly for my teacher. Did you ever get to know Steve Blaylock? You
No, no.
he's in New Orleans, or was. He's passed on, but yeah, it was just horn players all the time. Like
Hmm.
even so when I was in school in Hattiesburg in the early 2000s, and a little bit before that, a lot of people around me were just everyone was into Bill Frisell, you know,
Mhm.
and it's just funny. I just remember just fighting that so hard, and I
Yeah.
have no idea why, other than I just I didn't want to jump on the bandwagon or perceived bandwagon. And then, in retrospect, it was just so stupid of me because that was some of the greatest, guitar playing that I should have been hip to way back then. But
He's amazing, yeah. But if you think about like what they tell you in school to listen to, like they don't tell anybody to listen to guitar players besides guitar players. They tell
yeah,
everybody to listen to like John Coltrane and Charlie Parker, no matter what instrument you play. But
yeah,
like you got to be a guitar player for anyone to mention the name Wes Montgomery or something like that.
yeah, and then yeah, you're right. It's absolutely right. And then when I came back to listening to guitar players, I just went all in. And
Yeah,
now, sadly, it's kind of all I do.
yeah, great.
There's a problem though. There's something almost aspirational when listening to a non-guitarist because you hear these super pure virtuosic lines. You hear music that, in many respects, is not limited by the technical demands of our instrument.
Hmm.
Um, I wonder if you start to chase down something that you can never truly attain. You know,
If you can catch it, then what are you going to do with the rest of your life?
That's why I
that's
play pedal steel.
Yeah.
It's like it's a terrible, terrible quest.
that's great. That's actually a beautiful way to maybe end this session with you, Eric.
Oh, sure, yeah.
To keep on chasing. Oh, that's very inspiring. That said, we don't want to take any more of your time this evening. Eric Merchant, if you're in the New Orleans area, please look him up. You will definitely enjoy hearing his playing, and he's also available for online consumption, Instagram, and he's got music on his website. Is that ericmerchant.com?
EricMerchantMusic.com, I believe.
Okay,
Yeah.
ericmerchantmusic.com.
Uh-huh.
Check him
And any
out.
musicians out there, just a quick plug. If you're a musician passing through New Orleans, I've been playing at a jam session every Monday night, 10 p.m. to 1 in the morning, and musicians are welcome to sit in and come hang, and it's a great place to meet people at Carrollton Station Monday nights.
Very good.
Excellent. Well, Eric, thank you very much for joining us this episode of Pluck That.
Absolutely, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me, y'all.
Thanks, Eric.
Thanks, Eric.
All right, take care. All right, that was our guest Eric Merchant. Thank you so much for listening. Going to announce our next guest now. That's going to be Bokyeon Byun, the amazing classical guitarist. As always, we'd like to invite our listeners and viewers to send questions for the next guest. We're also, of course, open to hearing any kind of feedback that you'd like to share with us. So if you're on YouTube, feel free to drop a comment in this episode's video. Make sure you also like the video and subscribe to our channel. And if you'd like to send us an email with any kind of question or comment, you can send that to the following email address: pluckthatguitarpodcast@gmail.com. And see you next time.
Pluck that.
Like that.
Pluck that.